Hey all, sorry it's been a long time since I've made a video. I thought I'd give an update about what I'm doing and where I'm at the moment. And I'll start by saying I've taken a job with Start9, and people know, people that watch this channel a lot will know what Start9 is. They're the maker of an operating system called Embassy OS, which packages a whole bunch of open source apps together that can be run in a self-hosted manner and replace the need for centralized hosted apps that happen in other areas. And I'm quite excited about it, and I'd like to share why. Um, I believe that Bitcoin is one part of the puzzle of digital self sovereignty. And I want to separate myself from the last 6 or 7 years of shitcoinery that's been going on, because that kind of made me naive and blind to hope in any other domains apart from money. Because everything that people came up with as an inspirational thing outside of money, like social networks and chat platforms and video hosting and things like that, everything had to be done like Bitcoin. It had to have a blockchain, it had to have a token, and all of these things were scams and stupid because they were poorly thought out at best. And that basically turned me off the whole idea of the whole thing. But now it's come back and it's being done properly, or at least someone is attempting to do it properly here. And I'm excited to see it because we do want to get away from these big data platforms. We don't just want to do what we're doing with Bitcoin, to money. We want to do it to everything else as well. And I'll talk about why in a broader context, which is I don't believe much in political activism, at least outside of one domain. I don't really believe in anything with regards to making the world a better place that doesn't empower individuals. And the only way to empower individuals, in my opinion, is with technology. Because technology it's undeniable. It empowers if it's an empowering technology for an individual, that changes the balance of things and it changes what's practical for in the fight against the thing we should all constantly be fighting against, which is the state level tyranny, authoritarianism. These are the things that it's the time-honored battle between the individual and the state. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only war, and it's the only war there's ever been. It's the only war there ever will be, and we need tools to fight that war. And Bitcoin, we all know, is an incredible tool because if they control the money, they control the individual. And Bitcoin doesn't allow them to do that, so Bitcoin allows you to do what you need to do. It frees you up in the financial realm. Suddenly you can spend money in any way you see fit. You can't have your money inflated and stolen. You can't have your purchasing power moved from you to someone else through the Cantillon effect. You can't have your money frozen in a bank account. You can't because of some specious lawsuit. There's a whole bunch of things that can't happen. There's a whole bunch of systems of control that just don't work thanks to Bitcoin. But that's just financial liberation. But there are other areas too. And the most obvious one to focus on is communication. Because the only reason, I like to say this, the only reason you can say what you want with your throat, and I don't mean say what you want via email or via Facebook Messenger or whatever, the only reason you can actually speak words that you want to speak and not words that have to be pre-approved by the government is because the government don't actually have any technological control over your throat. If they did, the words you were allowed to say would be from a pre-approved list, and that is a fact. And this is because it's not about morals, it's not about right and wrong, it's not even about precedent, it's just about, is it technologically feasible for them to control you in a certain manner, or isn't it? And the reason you can still say what you want with your mouth is because it's not technologically practical for them to limit that. However, if you want to speak your mind over centralized big data platforms, it is feasible for them to police what you say, and so they do. And I don't want to hear any pretense about, oh, they're private companies, all this absolute bullshit arguments. They're not. They're enforcing censorship being pushed on them by the authorities. And if they're not doing that, then they are the de facto authorities. Either way, they are not getting out of this because they're private companies. These people are doing what they want, and if we use their platforms, we have to submit to their ideologies and their authoritarian tendencies. So the only way away from that is technological. It's not through complaining to Jack or Mark Zuckerberg. It's not complaining about them. It's not about abandoning social media either, because we're never going to put that cat back in the bag. It's about using a better alternative. And the same goes for chat platforms. If you're using WhatsApp, was okay for a while, it's not anymore. Facebook bought it. Even if they're still they seem to keep flip-flopping about whether they're going to maintain end-to-end encryption or not. The three-letter agencies keep pushing them to not have it. They sort of back and forth on it. But every one of these chat platforms, even if you take the best example, which is Signal, it's still, yes, it's open source. Yes, yes, it's end-to-end encrypted. But there's still a server involved, and we still don't know what software the server really runs because we can't verify it ourselves. And a lot of people I know that I respect that have a more informed opinion than me say it's really naive to assume that the Signal are using the software we think they are for their server. And that is a trust problem, and we don't want to be trusting if we can avoid it. So these are two examples of communication having to go through centralized platforms. And the reality is the technology is out there for you to be able to communicate, even social network, in a manner where there is no control over you, where you're technologically liberated. But the problem is the technology is just too damn complicated. So if I want to use an analogy, it's America is the freest country in a lot of ways. And this isn't to defend or attack America. I really want to stay as neutral as I can in this video, though I often go off on political tangents. I'm going to say, though, that the Second Amendment is a big part of the culture of America, and a reflection of the fact, and not only that, a means of maintaining the fact that they are a very free society. It changes things when everyone has a weapon. And I'm not saying we can debate whether it's a good or bad thing. My opinion on that doesn't matter. I think objectively we can all agree that there are many, many cultures on Earth, and one of the freest that there's ever been is America, and you can't really separate that from the fact that they have the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. So that being the case, what is the right to bear arms? It's the right to use a technology of defense. The right to bear arms is defense distributed. It's decentralized defense, because centralized defense means authoritarianism. We all know that. If you take everyone's guns and you leave defense up to a centralized group, that centralized group has an inordinate amount of control over the entire population. So that's not much fun. That's not a good way to set up your society. But what I'd like to really press home here is that a gun is simple enough to understand. You do need basic education. Of course you do. We don't want people using guns that don't have them. So American culture has a whole, Canadian too, a lot of gun cultures and hunting cultures have within them the coming of age rituals where people are taught how to use guns. And this is all stuff I've had to learn being from the UK, which is basically the most gun averse country that I know of. There's just no guns, even to the extent where the police don't have guns, or they didn't before 9/11, but now they basically do. Nonetheless, education about guns is important, but they're not a very complicated technology. They're very dangerous, so education is very important, but education still exists and people can use them. And I really believe the argument that they are equalizing. The guns make a kind of equality for people, because it doesn't matter if you're a big strong man with a gun or a tiny little woman that might be raped with a gun. Whoever has the gun is the person that's able to defend themselves, and you're both equal. Like, maybe you're not equally willing to use them, but the point is, I do believe and agree with the people that say gun rights are women's rights. And there's so many other. I don't want to go down too far in that, because there's anti-gun people, and I don't really have a strong disagreement with you. I don't agree, but I don't strongly disagree. I just think people are entitled to their different opinions there, and I can understand the desire to live in a country where there just aren't any guns around. That's where I grew up, and it is nice, but at the same time, it might not be a practical luxury in the long run. But anyway, that aside finished. My main point there is talking about what technology does with regards to liberation of individuals. So we have that in the digital realm, but it's just accessible to too few people because, yes, you can get away from using traditional finance. Yes, you can liberate yourself, but try using Bitcoin in 2012. It was difficult, and a lot of people would lose their coins. But also try getting away from Facebook and Twitter. It's the same story. They are centralized, but the user interfaces are so easy. Everything works so reliably. And if you want to use other platforms, it's difficult and it's unreliable. And who wants chat and social networking that aren't 100% reliable? Now, the point is, in order for this to be the equivalent technologically, or at least digitally technologically, if we were to translate that into the Second Amendment and say anyone can have a gun, but if you want a gun, you need to learn how to build one yourself from scratch. You need to learn metalworking. You need to learn how to make your own ammunition, all that stuff. It's not going to work for 99% of people. It wouldn't be practical, and you would have de facto centralization again. The only way you can do it is by having enough of this stuff made by people that know how to do it, and then everyone else using it. Now you're starting to see what I'm getting at with my enthusiasm about this operating system, Embassy OS. Because digital self-sovereignty exists in a whole bunch of domains now, not just money, but it's just not been accessible to enough people for us to hit any kind of threshold or critical mass. Because it's hard. People aren't systems administrators. People aren't software developers. It's difficult running these applications and running them in a reliable manner where everything just works. It's hard, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of passion, and most people realistically just aren't going to be able to do that. So that's what Start9 are doing. They're taking up all these apps we need, they're packaging them together, and they're putting it in a plug-and-play box where trust is minimized to the largest degree possible. So what it means is you buy one of these Raspberry Pis, you plug it in, and it works. Suddenly you have self-hosted chat and self-hosted social media and a Lightning node and a Bitcoin node and a self-hosted cloud storage, self-hosted Tor, hidden service, websites. You have all this stuff. You have it everywhere in the world, 24 hours a day. Everything's over Tor hidden services. So even if you're hosting controversial content or anything like that, no one's going to be able to track you down and find it. And even if they do, they can't just write a simple boilerplate email to Gmail or SoundCloud or YouTube and say, copyright violation, and then you lose your video straight away or your channel's gone, because no one wants to deal with that sort of stuff. Instead of that, what do you have? You have actual long-standing legal procedures where people have to actually make an effort, and that's even if they can unmask you, which I don't think is... You can't do dragnet surveillance. You can unmask Tor users, but you can't do dragnet, which makes it very expensive to target individual users. It's not like Facebook, where everything is known to everyone cheaply all the time. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. What I'm really trying to say is liberation through technology is so much more realistic than anything else. Bitcoin is a technology, and it works, and that's why it liberates us. And it's accessible to everyone, but it's also just about usable enough. But then you even have with Bitcoin itself, are you using it properly? Are you running a full node? Then do you want to use Lightning because you want to actually make a lot of payments with Bitcoin and you don't want them to be too expensive? Then you need to run a Lightning node, and Lightning's different to Bitcoin. There's no cold storage there. Lightning, you need to be online all the time. You need a server. And that's what the Embassy is. It's not a computer. It's not a personal computer. It's a personal server. And whenever you use a server in any capacity, whether it's iCloud or Facebook or Twitter or Signal or WhatsApp or Telegram or any of these platforms, you're always communicating with a third party that you're relying to do a bunch of stuff for you because you're not technically capable of doing it yourself, or you just can't be bothered. Embassy says, okay, for a couple of $100, you can buy this box and it will do all that stuff for you. It doesn't do email, I should point out, but I can get into that in a bit. But all these services are essential, and the more people use them, the better they get, and the stronger the networks get, and the less dependent we get on these big data platforms. We've already cut our dependence on banks. We've cut our dependence on politicians and central banks. We no longer need them. to play nice. We no longer need to fear when they print tons of money, which is what they're doing at the moment, and devaluing our savings. If we're saving up to buy a house and they're printing, and house prices are flying up and they're lying about inflation rates, that doesn't matter to you if you're holding Bitcoin, at least in the long term. Yes, short term it's volatile. Okay, there's a price you pay, but nonetheless, it's a worthwhile price. But that's just Bitcoin. But now you can run Bitcoin in this easy, self-sovereign manner. You're not using Bitcoin properly if you're not running Node, right? If you're not running a node. So what most people are going to need for us to change the balance of power in our world is technology. There's no other solution. That's just the reality of it. I mean, what's the oldest technology? Fire? Imagine if there was only one guy in your village that knew how to light a fire. He's the most powerful guy in the village. And if you have to go and ask him to do it for you every time, you're not independent, you're not self-sovereign, and you're essentially the slave of that person. If you learn how to do it yourself, then that's different. So it's true of all technology. And the reason we are so enslaved by the big data platforms at the moment is because they're doing something that we can't do for ourselves, except we can now, because someone has come along and said, all right, we need to, it's all very well having stuff available to the technologically sophisticated. We need to make this stuff available for everyone. And there are compromises and there are trade-offs in doing that, of course, and they are a for-profit company. But I have to tell you, everyone in it is not in it for the money. We're in it just like with Bitcoin. Yes, you make money being a Bitcoiner, but you're not doing it for the money. And the people that are in it for the money don't last. They're in it for the freedom, and that's why I'm doing it. And I thought I would touch on email quickly, because there's a reason you don't host your own SMTP on the Embassy OS, and it's just because if you try, good luck, because sending email from anything that isn't a big data platform already, or at least a very well-established alternative platform like ProtonMail, if you send an email from a self-hosted email server, it just won't make it to Gmail accounts or Hotmail accounts or Live accounts or any of that stuff, because email is basically centralized on a bunch of upper layers from the main protocol now. So email's a dead platform, but it's redundant anyway through Matrix Chat. Matrix Chat for me is the killer app of Embassy. It's a messaging app. It has all the functionality of every messaging app you've used before, but it looks most like Slack if I was going to compare it to something else. Now, Slack's great. It's a fantastic user interface, but it's centralized and crappy. Matrix is amazing. Hosting it yourself is just incredible. It is arguably, and you can argue this reasonably, the most secure way to communicate digitally on the planet right now. If you get an Embassy and you host your own Matrix instance on it, and Matrix is the protocol, by the way, and then you download the Elements app, that's your chat app, and it uses Matrix in the back end. If you can communicate that way, I would say that is the most secure way to communicate on this planet. There's no server. The only server is the one you run, and the server that the person you're communicating with, they run. They can also use your server too, but I would discourage them from doing that, just like I would discourage someone else from using my Bitcoin node. I'd tell them to run their own. Self-sovereignty, guys. Self-sovereignty is the key, because it makes things technologically impractical for governments to ram down our throats. And that's great. And I'd like to see more of it. I would like to see people posting controversial videos on medicine or the effectiveness of lockdowns or any of that stuff within my Mastodon timeline, where I'm self-hosting and they're self-hosting. There's no warnings there. There's no videos being taken down, because that stuff's misleading. There can be wrong information that Twitter takes down, and then I believe it just because I'm emotionally primed to believe everything that the fact checkers say has been debunked or is fake news or whatever. Frankly, I'm more inclined to believe stuff when social media and platforms say it's not true, which is stupid. But I'm a human and I'm emotional. But I would love to get rid of all this bullshit and find the signal, get rid of the noise, get rid of all the politics, and this is what Bitcoin does, and I want to do it everywhere else. What Bitcoin does is it doesn't take money out of politics, it takes politics out of money. There's no political decision making with regard to the inflation rate, with your ability to spend it, with your ability to hold it, or with the ability to how things change, though that's probably the weakest part of it, but we don't really want to change it so much anyway. But Imagine that. Imagine chat. Imagine social media with no politics, at least in how the platforms run. Yes, you can discuss politics on them, but there's no political decision making. It just sounds like freedom to me. And with a world of people doing that. Anyway, what I want to say really to round off this video is I'm happy to be working with these guys. I'm really inspired by the project, and they're quite an amazing team of people. We've got two of the best devs I've ever worked with, Aidan and Keegan. We do Twitter Spaces and things like that, and yeah, I know there's an irony there, of course, that we're still using these platforms, but you know, there are compromises to be made in certain areas. But I will say this, I feel like about this project the same way I did about Bitcoin in 2012, which is I really want this thing to work. I don't know if it will, and I don't want to tell anyone that it definitely will, but I think it will, and I think it might, and I don't really want to live in a world where it doesn't. So maybe not that extreme. That's certainly my definition of how I felt in Bitcoin about Bitcoin in 2012. I wouldn't go that far with the Embassy OS exactly, because Bitcoin is enough. Bitcoin is enough for the world. But there is more to it, I think, in the whole world of digital self-sovereignty. So I feel similarly with this, and I know the team do as well. We don't know if we are really realistically going to be able to get the average human being hosting their own digital services and breaking their reliance on third parties, on big data platforms. We don't know if it's really possible, but if it is possible, this is how you do it. You have to make it plug and play. We're not going to turn the whole world into software developers. That's just not going to happen. Just like we're not going to get the whole world able to manufacture their own weapons. That's not going to happen. We need to make it accessible for everyone. So that's what Embassy OS does. No one else has done anything like this. It looks deceptively like the other Raspberry Pi node projects like Umbrel and Raspberry Blitz and MyNode and, well, there's a whole host of them. And big respect to those guys, but they're not doing anything on the same, they're not doing anything with the same level of sophistication. What Embassy OS is doing is it's just taking Bitcoin as one part of the puzzle of digital self-sovereignty. And it does it in a way where this thing is reliable. I mean, I use Matrix as my main chat platform now. I still use Signal with people that haven't upgraded to it yet. But actually, Matrix can integrate with other chat platforms too, which is quite stunning, I've got to say. That means if you go full Matrix, you can communicate with everyone else on all their platforms too, because there's bridges. That's amazing, because that means you're not waiting for everyone else to upgrade, and you can actually just have one chat platform. But we all know that XKCD cartoon where it says, oh, there's 15 chat platforms. I'm going to make a new one that covers everyone's use cases. Then the next frame is situation. There are now 16 chat platforms. Like, yes, obviously that's a thing too. But the point is, if you want, you can just use Matrix. And if your friends use Matrix too, great. You can talk one-on-one. If they don't, then you've got to go through a bridge. And but I mean, it's easier than not. It's easier than switching apps all the time. It's quite user-friendly, frankly. And the security of it really is quite mind-boggling. I mean, most people are using Embassy for the Lightning functionality because it's really solid for that. And the main reason that you'd go to Embassy over any of the other Lightning in a box on a Raspberry Pi node things is because you need 100% uptime for Lightning. You cannot be offline at all because it just ruins your channels. I mean, it ruins your reputation or clout within the Lightning network. You need to be online all the time for a bunch of reasons. And I've got an Umbrel node. Big respect to the guys, but it goes offline once a day, and I can't find any reason for that. And that's basically because it's a shell script that runs a bunch of Docker containers. That's it. It's not an operating system. It's nothing like that. Embassy OS is a full-on operating system. It's being rewritten from the ground up in Rust at the moment for the new upgrade that's coming any week now. That's 0.30. At the moment, we're still on 0.2, 0.14. And it's around. It's discounted at the moment. I really encourage anyone to become an advocate for this product. It's a little bit different from what I'm used to doing with advocating for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is not a company. But I don't have any problem with capitalism. I don't have a problem with people doing work and getting paid for it and doing it in the most forthright and open manner possible. It's still open source. You can still download it and compile it yourself for free. It still remains within the ethics of what I believe in with digital liberation. I don't believe in liberation digitally through closed source software. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that's ethical either. I do believe in open source software. I do believe in the FOSS movement. They are not, Embassy OS is not fully FOSS. It's open source, but they are limited. They limit you to the fact where you can't download their operating system source code, change some stuff in it, compile it up, and then sell what you've just done to other people, which I think is fair enough. I don't think you should profit off someone else's hard work. I'm not going to say that's black and white, but I don't really have any problem with people saying, look, we want to build this thing for humanity. It's our job. We need to earn money doing it. We're not going to survive off donations alone. So at least in the bootstrapping phase, we need to earn money for it. But if you can compile it yourself and you're willing to spend the time and effort figuring out how to do that, be our guest. Here's the source code. Even come in the chat with us, come in the Telegram chat, come in the Matrix chat, and ask us if you hit any roadblocks and we'll help you. That to me says what it should say about the company, which is we want people using self-hosted apps. We don't want people relying on big data platforms, and the reason we want this is because we want freedom. And it's really nice to see, and it's been good. I met these guys down in Miami, the Bitcoin 2021 conference, and just had a long conversation, and I was just blown away by what I'm hearing and their commitment to these ideologies, and it's good. It's good to meet people like this, and it's good to be a part of it. So, nonetheless, when it comes to me personally, what I'm doing, it remains. I'm excited now that there's another realm to get excited about in the whole digital self-sovereignty area. Very excited that there's more now than just Bitcoin, and that it's not being done through shitcoins and blockchain and tokenize everything. And that's nice to see. So it's an exciting time for me. Nonetheless, this channel remains what it is. If anyone has any requests on what to focus on, or even about the Embassy OS, please let me know. I'd love to make some more educational videos. The stuff about the Start9 Embassy, I'm going to be sticking that won't be uploaded to this channel. It'll be uploaded to the Start9 YouTube channel. This channel, I'll maintain it primarily. It will remain a Bitcoin education channel, and just generally a Bitcoin fanboy channel, which is what I am, Bitcoin's biggest fanboy. And as usual, let me know if you have any topics you want me to discuss or anything like that. And I'll be back with more regular videos, more frequent videos as of the next week or two. And lastly, I should say I'm speaking at the Bitcoin Standard Conference in Mexico, hosted by Ugly Old Goat. If you want to go to that, if you're in Mexico or you want to go to it, please go to my Twitter and you can get a 15% discount on the booking fee if you click on the image with my face on it. And that would be worth doing if you want to go to it. It should be a good conference. I'm really looking forward to it. It's really, it's a smaller conference and it's really, really in-depth. I'm quite shocked at some of the discussions and the panels they're having there. It's not Bitcoin's good, and by the way, some shitcoins are good too, which is kind of what Miami turned into. It's really, really nuanced, and I'm going to have to do a lot of reading over the next couple of weeks to make sure I'm really match fit. But anyway, I'm glad to have done a video again. Sorry for the rambling, and I hope my excitement and passion for what they're doing with Embassy OS comes across and excites you too. So comments and questions welcome, and speak to everybody soon. Latest, guys.